Nobody broke down the doors. Nobody fired a gun. Nobody wore a mask. Billions of dollars moved across borders while the world slept. The people responsible wore suits, not ski masks. So here is the question. What if the biggest bank heist in history looked exactly like a normal Tuesday? This is the story of 1MDB, the Malaysian Development Berhad, a government investment fund created in 2009 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. It was built on paper to develop the country, to fund schools, hospitals, and energy projects for ordinary people. Instead, according to investigators across multiple countries, it became the vehicle for one of the largest financial frauds ever recorded. The money that disappeared, reportedly over $4 billion, did not vanish into thin air. It allegedly flowed through banks in Singapore, Switzerland, Luxembourg, and the United States. It bought super yachts, Manhattan penthouses, and funded Hollywood films. And for years, almost nobody noticed. In 2009, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak signed off on the creation of 1MDB. The stated mission was noble, a sovereign wealth fund to drive national growth. But almost immediately, according to U.S. Department of Justice filings, money began moving in unusual ways. Large sums were transferred through shell companies in the British Virgin Islands, with little documentation. To explain why. By 2012 and 2013, billions of dollars had allegedly been raised through bond sales arranged by Goldman Sachs, a Malaysian financier named Low Taik Joe, widely known as Joe Low, is alleged by U.S. federal prosecutors to have orchestrated much of the movement. He has denied wrongdoing. According to investigators, a significant portion of those bond funds was diverted before it ever reached any development project. Would you notice $1 billion leaving your country? By 2013, money allegedly connected to 1MDB had reportedly reached a personal bank account linked to Prime Minister Najib Razak, approximately $681 million, according to the Wall Street Journal. Malaysian authorities initially said the money was a donation from the Saudi royal family. That explanation was later disputed by investigators and never fully verified. In 2015, investigative journalists at the Wall Street Journal published their first major exposé. The story cracked the case open for the world. By 2016, the U.S. Department of Justice filed civil forfeiture complaints against assets it alleged were purchased with stolen 1MDB funds, reportedly including a private jet, a super yacht called the Equanimity, artwork by Monet and Van Gogh, and financing for the film The Wolf of Wall Street. The U.S. Department of Justice confirmed in court filings that over $4 billion was allegedly misappropriated from 1MDB between 2009 and 2015. Goldman Sachs, which raised approximately $6.5 billion in bonds for the fund, later reached a settlement of $3.9 billion with Malaysian authorities. Goldman Sachs acknowledged that a former employee violated the bank's policies, but did not admit broader institutional guilt. Swiss authorities froze hundreds of millions of dollars in accounts believed to be connected to 1MDB. Singapore shut down two banks, BSI Bank and Falcon Private Bank, citing breaches of anti-money laundering regulations linked to 1MDB-related transactions. Not every element of this story is settled. Joe Low remains a fugitive as of the time of this script's publication. Through his legal representatives, he has maintained that he is innocent and that the charges against him are politically motivated. His whereabouts are officially unknown. Some Malaysian political figures argued that Western media coverage of 1MDB was an attempt to destabilize the country. There are also open questions about which international banks processed transactions they should have flagged, and why compliance systems across multiple countries failed or were bypassed for so long. For ordinary Malaysians, this story is not about abstractions. It is about roads that were not built, hospitals that ran short of funding, and a generation of young people who grew up in a country where billions were promised and never arrived. The human cost of financial crime is always quieter than the headlines, but it is no less real. When Najib Razak was voted out of office in 2018, Malaysians flooded the streets. In 2022, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison on charges of abuse of power, criminal breach of trust, and money laundering related to 1MDB funds. For many in the country, it was the first time in years that the system had felt, even briefly, like it worked. Think of 1MDB like a river. The water, public money, was supposed to flow to farmers and villages downstream. Instead, someone quietly redirected the river at the source. By the time people noticed the riverbed was dry, the water was already sitting in 100 private swimming pools across 3 continents. That is what financial crime at scale actually looks like. This case changed how governments talk about anti-money laundering laws. It exposed how offshore systems can hide stolen public money in plain sight. It revealed that global banks, under pressure to close deals, sometimes failed to ask the questions they were legally required to ask. The 1MDB scandal is now taught in law schools and compliance programs worldwide as a defining case of systemic failure. Here is what we know. A sovereign wealth fund created to help Malaysia was allegedly used to steal billions through shell companies, international banks, and personal accounts. Investigations across at least 6 countries confirmed major financial irregularities, and multiple parties, including Goldman Sachs and several private banks, paid significant settlements. What we do not fully know is whether every person involved has been identified or whether all the money has been traced. One question still hangs in the air. How much stolen money is still out there? And whose name is on it? Jolo's extradition and trial, if it happens, could reveal new details about who else was involved. Confidence, medium, further international cooperation on anti-money laundering enforcement is likely to produce tighter regulations on shell companies and offshore banking. Confidence, high. A full public accounting of every dollar moved through the scheme may never happen, given how many jurisdictions and private entities are involved. Confidence, high that full clarity remains unlikely. The most dangerous heists are not the ones that make noise. They are the ones designed to look like paperwork. If this story changed how you see the way money and power move in the world, watch our next video, The Offshore Secret, How the Wealthy Hide Money and Why It's Legal. It connects directly to everything you just learned.